Welcome to the Retail Reality Show.
Welcome, everyone, to the newest episode of the Retail Reality Show. We're quite happy to be here again for you, and we are also happy to continue our little dance contest. We expect fan videos with you dancing to our jingle at one point, but we're not famous enough yet, but we're going to get there, I promise. I'm here with my co-host, Yael, and we have a super cool guest today. His name is Ken Pilot. Many of you guys have heard of him or know him. So maybe we'll just give you, Ken, the word to introduce yourself real quick.
Well, Nicolas, I don't know if I can do better than super cool. So thank you for that. But as you know, I have been around the retail space for many years, a long time running different companies, and now very invested in doing a bit of what you do, which is podcast hosting, also advising retail brands and investing in and advising tech platforms.
Perfect. Welcome. And we also have Yael, as I said. Yael, hello. How are you doing? How's life?
I'm good. Life is good. As long as, the sun is shining, I'm happy. And to be here today with two friends makes me more happy. So, yeah, I'm pretty good. Nicolas, how are you?
Well, I think I'm fine. The sun is not shining. It's raining in Basel. It's chilly. But from what I've heard, from next week, it's going to be nice weather again. So we're looking forward to that. Apart from that, I'm good as usual.
Awesome.
But with that, let's go into the ice-breaking session. Yeah, you want to do the honors?
Sure. So, Ken, before we do our traditional icebreaker session, since, you are, you have a very successful podcast yourself. How does it feel to be on the other side for a change? And not instead of interviewing people, telling us about yourself. Are you excited?
It feels a bit odd, I must say, because I'm generally asking people about what they do versus having someone asking me. But I'll let you know when we're done.
Okay. Fair enough. We'll go easy on you. So, we won't go easy on you, but we'll start easy with some short ice-breaking questions. Where do you shop?
I have a few brands that are my go-to brands. I love Buck Mason. It's one of my favorites. Faraday is also up there on the list for me, as is Todd Snyder. So those would be kind of my starting points for any shopping expedition. And after that, it's more an area I like to shop in Soho.
I also like to shop in Soho if I'm around. What about groceries?
For groceries, I would say I'm probably more a Whole Foods guy. It's convenient. It's a block away, so I'll pop in there.
And what's your favorite podcast? And not yours, and obviously not the Retail Reality Show, because it is the best podcast, but we can't shamelessly promote ourselves. So any other retail podcast that you particularly like?
I wouldn't say it's a retail podcast per se, but it has a retail bias, and that would be The Pivot with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. I really enjoy the two of them. They cover a variety of topics, and they will lean into, from time to time, retail.
No, definitely. That's a cool choice.
And last, from the easy questions, Gen AI or agentic AI?
Agentic AI. I think Gen AI, which is built obviously into agentic AI, but that's agentic AI is the future.
I'm going to follow up on that. So agentic AI, and how do you feel about sort of, let's say, they call it general AI sometimes in Germany. In the end, something that seems or feels like it's almost conscient. Is that something that you think is going to happen soon, or is it something that you're worried about, or is it something that you're excited about?
Yeah, I think it's happening now. I'm not as worried about it, though you do hear issues around accuracy. And also one concern I do have about Gen AI is our willingness to just accept the answer as if it is right. So we may not do the fact checking that's necessary because we will accept it at face value. So that's the one concern I do have, but it's such a part of my life. I mean, I'm a perplexity guy, so I'm using that all the time, and I love what it can do and how up to date it is.
No, makes sense. Like Perplexity, also I use it a lot. It's a cool tool, and there's, I think, also new tools coming into the scene that do similar things. I don't know if you've seen Manus, Manus. That's also kind of impressive. Sort of a bit of like a Perplexity on speed, and it can actually use itself as a mouse. So it basically interacts with websites, and whenever it hits CAPTCHA, for example, it asks you to intervene. So it says, I can't get past this CAPTCHA. Can you help real quick? And then you take over the mouse of the AI tool and you help it solve the CAPTCHA. And then it continues researching. It's actually kind of cool.
I saw it. This is genius for, like, filling out long forms, RFPs, whatever. Like, you can just give it all of your information, and it just puts everything on the form for you, and you don't need to do anything but maybe just review at the end to make sure you like it. It's amazing.
That's great that it can address an RFP, because those forms can be huge. That's a big win.
Yeah. But anyways, we're getting caught in the icebreakers. Let's start with our real questions.
Are you guys are you warmed up now? Because we did the icebreaker, right? You're ready to go. All right, let's go.
We are warmed up. So, Ken, our first question. You've had quite an impressive career, and I think, again, many people know you from your various roles. But from a president at GAP to an advisor to an investor, how does your perspective, or how has your perspective evolved over the years when it comes to retail leadership? And I mean, in the end, it's not just your positions that have changed. I would say it's probably also the retail landscape and, like, let's say, consumers' perception of retail. So what do you think? What are your lessons from your time at these various brands, GAP J.Crew, other major brands, and also your perspectives as an advisor on especially leading retail, and maybe also about the challenges of retail these days?
So let me unpack that question just a little bit. I think probably some of the early lessons learned around leadership was how to be present and how to also manage a team, a diverse team of people, some who are left brain, some who are right brain. I mean, retail organizations have creatives, they have planners, they have logistics, supply chain people. It's quite diverse. And you need to really have an understanding for what's happening in each of those areas to be an effective leader. You don't have to be an expert. You have to hire the experts in each of those areas. But understanding how each area contributes to the success of a company is critically important. You guys might find this a little bit strange, but one area that I was not fond of going through my time with different brands in the apparel space was technology. I would prefer to go to any meeting, but a meeting that had to do with technology.
So you're like facing your fears up front today.
Yeah, it wasn't that exciting, the internet, who's buying online. I mean, I was given at one point in time, I was responsible for building out the GAP online business. And I thought we should call it GAP Online Direct, but we couldn't call it that for obvious reasons. But that was it for me. I thought it was fun to have shutters and shades in the storefront, and saying, we're closed, but we're open 24 hours online. I mean, those are the early days of thought around it. So anyway, the role has evolved, and I still think it's critically important to understand each area. But now more than ever, technology has moved way up to the top of priorities for companies in areas that they have to excel in. First and foremost, it's all about product. Without great product, I don't care how good everything else is, you will not move your brand forward. You have to have an emotional connection with the customer. And without that, nothing else really matters. So assuming the product is in place, technology is now doing amazing things to move brands forward at an incredibly fast pace. So a leader today has to embrace a whole lot, a broad understanding of all the functional areas of a retail organization, and also be very in step with what's happening in technology, specifically now AI, which is really helping move companies forward and will also be helping to save money, both in terms of your organizational structure and also in speed.
So retail leaders need to be jack of all trades. That's what you were saying. Like they need to know the product, the manufacturing, the technology, everything.
Ideally, and it's not often that you find leaders that have that kind of balance. I think people tend to move towards areas that they're most comfortable in, their comfort zone, which was certainly for me. My comfort zone was product, and as I developed as a leader, I got into other areas to understand more and more about those areas. But I think what really rounds out a leader is being able to emotionally understand the jobs of your leadership team, to know what challenges they face, and having that empathy around their challenges is most important.
I have I really resonate with what you're saying from in the end, my role is I am a retail leader today. I have a vast responsibility from technology to emotionally address our consumers, to choosing the right assortment, to choosing the right price. So there's so much that's in the scope of retail leaders today. I really like the way you expressed it, that basically in the end, from subject matter expertise, now you have to be an expert in many fields, but then enabling or empowering your team to do what they're best at while understanding the scope of their work. A question that popped in my head is, what was your inflection point? So when did you start liking technology? Was there a certain moment? Did you meet God?
No, I think after I probably had my last adult job, which was running a business at ABC Home, or maybe while I was running ABC Home, a friend of mine asked me to invest in his fund. That was Ken Seif, and he had a fund called Beanstalk Ventures, and it was made up of early stage retail technology. So I put some money into the fund, and then I got to meet some of the founders of the tech platforms that I invested in. And I sat there and I said, boy, if I had had one of these or used one of those while I was in this job or that job, I may have been dangerous. So that was my moment, my aha moment. And really from that point forward, and just to put a pin in the date, probably 2013. So a good 12 years ago, I really started kind of geeking out and getting excited about technology and the potential for technology.
Amazing. And you actually had the chance to work alongside iconic leaders like Mickey Dressler and others. Who was the person that impacted you most, and what impacted you from that person?
Well, certainly working with Mickey was an amazing experience. One thing that I learned most from Mickey, well, there are a few things, but he put the customer at the center. He was incredibly customer centric. He was the customer advocate, chief customer officer before there even was one. And by that, I mean, he would go to the stores. He would listen to the associates. He would take customer calls. He would let us know. He wanted to know what customers thought of product. And he was never above it. And I loved that about him. I love the way he put himself out there and wanted information and feedback on the product because he really cared. And then he sought to make it his mission to improve product based on feedback that he received. So that I really liked. The other thing that Mickey did that I thought was unique is he led by wandering. And by that, he managed by wandering. He was never really in his office. He was just moving from one office to another. And you could be doing your work, and in the middle of the day, you'd have a Mickey meeting. Like, he'd be in your office and like, hey, what's happening? What are you doing? What's selling? What's working? And you had to be on your game. So everybody was always very in tune with what was working, what wasn't working, what they needed more of, what they needed less of. There was an energy around what we were doing at GAP. It was truly a movement that was extremely exciting.
Okay, Ken, what, like, so far our conversation has been inspiring already. It's really fun to talk to you. So now we're going to ask you the hard questions, because I think everyone is interested in your opinion on these kind of questions. And one is asking you to be sort of an oracle. So what do you see as the biggest shift in consumer behavior in the last 3 to 5 years? And how should senior retail leaders respond? And what do you expect to happen in the future? Because I think last 3 to 5 years have been pivotal, but also that's the oracle part. What do you think is going to happen next?
So I think one of the biggest shifts we've seen is really the way brands are marketing and the way customers perceive brands. And specifically, we're seeing that the role of social media plays so much more of an important role. TikTok, Reels, Instagram. Customers are experiencing product from other customers. So storytelling continues to be important, but it's taken on a very new dimension. Going forward, it will continue to be important. I think what brands will need to do is figure out how they bring that storytelling into their own e-commerce site, because all the stories are great in TikTok and Reels, but you never get that first party data. So how do brands reinvent their e-commerce site, which in general is probably the same as it's been over the past 20 years? Not from an efficiency point of view, because sites operate far more efficiently. But if you think about how we shop online, it's still kind of 3 images, 3 PDPs across, scroll up, hit the item, it goes to your cart, and it comes home. It's very efficient, but it's boring. So how do brands create energy on the site? And one area, I know, Yael, you and I have talked about this a number of times, and Yael works with Buy With, and they do video. I'm an investor in Firework, and they do video. But how does video play a more important role on an e-commerce site? Where should it be used? How can it inform? And not just to be a shiny penny, but a way that helps customers decide that they want the product. One thing that Firework is doing is they're porting over video from Reels or TikTok onto the PDP to really show the customer this is how to wear the item, or this is what it looks like. And I find that to be a smart use of video. Also, what's happening with e-commerce is the PDP is the new landing page, right? Customers are really going right there. So brands have one moment to win, and that's on the PDP. So whether you're adding social proof or video or anything else that you can do, or expanded descriptions, reviews, this is your moment. This is your homepage. You've got to make it successful. So I digressed. But going forward, I think storytelling and the way you bring it into your site, maybe even into your stores, and how you leverage beyond storytelling, how you're leveraging AI to help answer questions for customers is where we will be going. And when I say AI, I'm thinking more in terms of natural language. Just as we query Perplexity or ChatGPT, being able to query a website, being able to query a screen in a store, and get back great real-time information that helps you make a decision. So how brands harness the power of natural language search is going to be critically important over the next few years. I can't go beyond 2 years because who knows what's going to
Who
happen, but
knows? Yeah.
that's what I'm calling natural language search to the new level.
And I think even if taking it a bit further, what about if we combine the natural language processing with video,
I
right?
love
And that creates that real conversation that, I mean, real conversation, right? But still, this is what people are after, right? We're after engagement. We're after, it's not about going to a website and watching a PDP after PDP until you find the right dress or the right shoes or the right I don't know, whatever you were looking for. It's about the experience. And just like, when we're walking in the mall and seeing people and talking and interacting, that needs to happen online as well. And I think we're not there yet. And obviously technology is there, but in terms of implementation, I think retailers are still wrapping their heads around how to bring that technology in a way that that feels natural and not not turning people off. So
Yeah, I could
I couldn't agree more. I
envision.
have a follow-up question for you, Ken. If you look into what you just said, both of you just said, I think it makes a lot of sense. We as consumers want to engage. We want to engage with natural language. We want to engage with video. We want to engage with something that's fun. How is there, or what's our reason to live as retailers if there's TikTok Shop?
I'm sorry, just say that again.
So what's our reason to live as retailers, or what's our reason to be as retailers if there is TikTok Shop? Because in the end, it combines everything that we want right now. Natural language works quite well. There is a lot of interaction. There's live streams. You can interact with the streamers. You can talk to them. You can shop directly from the app. Everything is in there, your wallet, your addresses. So how do we compete? Because what you're saying is we should actually sort of, if I hear you correctly, we should create an experience that's similar to that, but we want to put it into a retail side. So what's your perspective on it?
Well, TikTok is such a small amount of business versus online shopping. It's quite minuscule, and also,
but it's
it has
growing fast.
it's growing fast, but also has a huge amount of returns. So people in the moment tend to make these impulse purchases, which is not sustainable. And I think brands will start to see that also. So I think it's taking kind of the best of what we like about TikTok, and it's porting it into whether it's your online store or in store. And I can see where you can have screens in the store with AI associates where you can simply just walk up and query an associate. Like I can imagine walking into a Hoka store and seeing an AI associate and walking up to the associate and saying, I weigh 155 pounds. I run 75 miles a week. I supinate and I'm a toe striker. What do you recommend for me to wear? And that associate would tell me right away. And they would, okay, what colors does it come in? And do you have it in my size? Well, we don't have this one in your size, but we can send it to you online. I mean, that's where I see some of these solutions going in the store, because the stores are not getting the same amount of tech love that we see online, but it is an omni experience. If we have something that is working really well online and we're using natural language search online, why can't we use it in store? Why can't associates help us in the store? Like even finding an item. I mean, if you were to search for an item in the store and then want to know, how do I complete the look? Every associate in the store should really be a trained stylist. And, you think of platforms out there like Find Mine or Stylytics, where once you find a shirt and I ask the associate, what do I wear with it? They should immediately present me with 3 or 4 options that are in stock in my size. If not, be ready to order it for me online. That makes a great experience in the store. So I see ways to take online tools to the store and take the store experience to the next level. and create the same benefits that we all appreciate from shopping online, which is efficiency. So put that efficiency in the physicality of the store, and I think it could be an amazing win for the customer.
Well, Ken, we can go through a retail conversation in May 25 without talking about tariffs. How vulnerable are US retailers and brands right now?
So it's a very, very tricky moment with tariffs. It's interesting. The bigger the retailers, the better positioned they are in general. I mean, you take a look at companies like a Gap or American Eagle who have less than 10% exposure to China. And China is really the issue. With 145% tariffs, it's really, you have an embargo. Companies are not producing in China right now. They're waiting. And if they are producing, they're praying that something changes soon. Something along the lines of a provisional change where that tariff rate would be brought down, because it's going to take you time to create a tariff treaty with China, just like with these other countries. But you can get agreements on ways to move forward. My real concern in this whole tariff mess is what will happen with Vietnam and what will happen with Cambodia. Those two countries are number 2 and 3 in apparel manufacturing and imports to the US, and they're just ahead of India. Those two countries take in a lot of funding from China. There's a lot of Chinese support. And to what degree the US will want to see that support there is a real question mark for me. And I could see the US potentially increasing tariffs on Vietnam. Not crazy, but they could go from 10% now to 20%, and the same for Cambodia. And that's impactful. I mean, it was a 25% threat of tariff during Trump 1.0 that got many companies to get out of China. So where would companies go? My gut tells me that India is going to be the big winner for the US. They're number 4, but I think that they're going to get something done with the US that they become the winner and they become the next China for the US. So that's just my guess on all of this. I'm very much in favor of what Trump is doing, in that the U.S. has not been treated fairly relative to tariffs. And it happens in industries outside of apparel and footwear, mostly automotive. But if you look at India, if you look at Vietnam, Cambodia, China, Hong Kong, Japan, I mean, the tariffs on autos are 90 to 100%. We don't have access to those markets. So I believe there should be reciprocal tariffs in place. I'd like to see those tariffs come down. But I don't agree with Trump's approach or his strategy on how we're going about reducing these tariffs. You're not giving people time to make the change, although he did just go back to the automotive group and give them a 2-year reprieve. Hey, hello, what about apparel, toy manufacturers, shoe manufacturers? We can't reroute the ship on a dime. And that is a real problem. So the problem will really be brought to bear by smaller companies in that $100 to $200 million range and down, that have relied on China, because China, unlike Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, even India, they're really best known for doing smaller MOQs with great quality and amazing efficiency. And companies have relied on China for that, even with that initial Trump tariff in 2020. And that's a real problem for those companies. So it's kind of the tale of two cities, the big and the small. And the small are really at risk right now.
Yeah, and it's like you said, like the big ones, they have the power to negotiate, they have resources, but the small ones, I saw your LinkedIn post about this as well, and I think they need to come together to create some kind of like a coalition and to try to go to the government together with their needs, because they're as important as the big automotive companies, even though one car sells for dozens of thousands of dollars, and maybe a shirt sells for $5, but we still buy a lot more shirts than we buy cars.
Yeah, that's if you take a look at the U.S. I think in 1970, almost 70% of what we consumed in this country in the way of apparel and footwear was produced here, and now it's less than 8%. We're not going back. We can't afford to go back. It's not realistic. So it's a real issue right now. I'm hoping we start to see this week. And today's date is May 6th. I don't know when we'll air the podcast, but I'm hoping we'll see this week some of the first agreements done that will start to give people confidence that we're getting tariff treaties done. That said, yesterday Trump announced he wants to apply 100% tariffs on films made outside of the U.S. What that actually means, we don't really know, but it's not good. So every day there's something new here. We've got to get through it.
Yeah, and with that perspective, I mean, we've talked about social, we've talked about TikTok, we've talked about engagement. There is a trend right now around a no buy movement on TikTok, and in general, it seems, I mean, that might be a short-lived trend. We know TikTok trends, they can die quickly. However, what we feel is in all countries, like Switzerland, I think in the US it's also quite prevalent, the consumer climate is going down. Consumers don't want to buy right now. Do you see companies right now that are navigating that well from your perspective in the US? And also, do you agree? I mean, it can be that you don't agree. Basically, regardless of that, who do you see is excelling in managing the situation with the consumer and the consumer expectations well on your market and also the markets you know well?
Well, it's interesting. I think one of the big changes that's going to impact the U.S. consumer is the death of the de minimis rule, which precludes product coming into the United States that's under $800 and not being taxed. That rule is gone. And that rule really supported the growth of Shein, Temu, and even Quince. So you're going to have a natural shift because those goods are going to be more expensive. So cheap and cheerful may be something of the past, and customers are going to be spending more. So they're going to continue to scrutinize more on how they spend, where they spend. And I think, again, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. It's that brand story. It's creating that emotional connection with the customer. Those are the brands that are going to win. The brands that, whether it's Gen Z or whatever generation we're looking at, customers identify product and brands as the brands that satisfy their needs, that meet them as a customer, that do what they like. And I love brands that are looking into the circular economy and how they're using it. We'll maybe talk about, I think, love to talk about archive a little bit, as I think they're probably one of the most interesting concepts out there today. And for those who aren't familiar with archive, I'm not an investor, by the way, this is not a plug, but archive, think of them as they are the circular economy as a service. So they work with Faraday, for example. You can go to a Faraday store. You can bring back a Faraday shirt. They take it back. They give you a gift card for the value of that shirt. And then that shirt will appear online in Faraday's secondhand shop. So you can buy that shirt used or slightly worn, gently worn, I think is the term. So I think that's a very interesting place to be. I think customers love the idea of peer-to-peer sharing, buying clothing that's used or gently worn. It creates another economy, and that space is really growing rapidly.
Super cool example. So in the end, I think we've all seen the circular plays. There's a couple that came and went. But I think there is a new trend towards it. And at last, what you said about the de minimis rule, and there's similar, like, let's say, similar approaches in different countries, that also means that merchandise gets more expensive again. So circular also has an economical advantage. So I think even from that perspective, there's a good chance that that trend will catch up again and we'll have more tailwind. Cool. But let's move on. I think, we've got a couple of questions around your very own podcast, because we're intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, Ken, you've hosted already quite a few people. I think you've had like 3 seasons by now for the retail pilot?
I kind of forget to do the seasons, but I've had a lot of guests. So maybe okay, I like that. I'm in season 3.
Okay, season 3. From all the conversations you've had so far, which one surprised you the most, and what did you take from it?
Maybe I'll answer it a little differently. Surprised were ones that I learned the most from, or so I had 3 podcasts, and I think they had a common denominator. The 3 guests, and I'll share who they were, all faced huge personal challenges, and they all managed to overcome them. So I did a podcast with Andy Dunn, who was the founder of Bonobos. And in his book, he talks about overcoming his bipolar disorder. And you read about and you understand how he went from the highest highs to the lowest lows, even to a point where he was admitted to a hospital for
While he was the CEO?
while he was the CEO of Bonobos for some violent actions, actually against his then girlfriend, who he subsequently married. So just to put a pin in that, but I thought that was interesting just to see how he dealt with it, what he did to overcome that, and have a very successful career. Steve Madden was also a guy that was plagued by drugs and then went to jail for insider trading and still managed to come out of it and run a very successful business. He's not the CEO because legally he can't be, but he's still very involved. I work with him today, and he's as energized as ever. But it's understanding how someone can hit the lowest of lows and come back and still win. And the third person I'd put in that category is the CEO of Saks, Mark Metrick. Mark was an alcoholic, and he was actually fired by Saks and went to rehab twice.
Okay.
And the second time, he actually lost his family. They left him. He came back, and when he was at the bottom of the barrel, literally, he stopped drinking on his own, which is very dangerous. He moved down a path of recovery on his own, got rehired by Richard Baker, who's the HSBC CEO that oversees Saks and the Hudson Bay Company, which is now no longer. And he was put into a financial position. And in that position, he really began to excel. And he got his life back together, and he got his family back. And then he moved up through the ranks and became the CEO of Saks and led their divestiture of Saks, of the stores and online, and now heads up Saks Global. He's run a marathon. So, somebody again who the bottom fell out on him and he came back. I think that's very inspirational. So those are 3 inspirational leaders. And I've been fortunate to speak to so many, but I found those to be of such value because it really helps people understand that no matter how low you may fall, there's still an opportunity to come back. And here are 3 examples.
And I think that especially in the retail business where, you've talked about empathy before and connecting not only with consumers, but also with your employees, coming from a position where you're a man or a woman that has, seen everything, experienced things on your own. You're not like coming from up here that, you've only been in the better part of your life, and you're really coming from a place where you have experience also with the less nice experiences of life. And while it's unfortunate that you had to go through those experiences, I think this is also what probably helps them connect with so many people on such a deep level.
I think it's truly what you're sharing also means that in your podcast, one of your specialties is people open up, people talk about topics that normally might not be the topic of a business podcast, which also I think makes it very, very strong. So all of our followers, even though we don't like you listening to other podcasts, obviously, if you don't know the Retail Pilot, tune in. And with that, we know, Ken, you got a place to be. We have one last question for you, and that is around advice, around personal philosophy. And I think it's perfect because you just shared something that inspired you, or that was inspiring, or were inspiring guests for you. What is your one big advice to a retail leader in 2025? So what should we as retail leaders, be it a CEO, a COO, what should we sort of consider? What's important? What's your advice for us?
Start with the perspective of the customer. See your company through the customer's eyes. From experience with product, the stores, online, how does the customer see you? The better a CEO understands that, the better the company will do.
I think that's the perfect wrap up for basically every episode. Maybe we just put it in as a closing jingle for the future. Ken, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time, for your insights, and for this great conversation. We hope to see you very soon on one of the events, or maybe we can actually do this again next year. See how all of our predictions and discussions have played out. For now, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. A lot of fun, Yael. Always good to see you.
Always great to see you, and Nicolas as well. Thank you, guys.